In this tutorial, I'm going to show you around the VinylMaster interface so you can get to know your way around and get a feel for how the program works and where to find everything. So to begin with, let's take a look around the general layout. In the center here we have our designing area. So we have our default page, as you can see here, which is set to letter size, and this is where we do all our designing. We can zoom out, we can zoom in, etc. So this is our designing area here. This is where we do most of our artwork layout. Now, along the top edge here we have our menus, all our default menus, and I'll explain some of these in a little while. Along the first row of tools here we have some static tools. These tools stay as they are most of the time. Some of the ones down the end here do change occasionally, but by far and large these tools will always be available to you, so you know that they're there. Now the second row of tools are a little bit different. These tools are dynamic. These tools will change depending on what we're doing in here. So if I'm designing something in here, I'll see different tools in here. But I'll come back and explain those as well. Over on the left hand edge we have our object mode, things like object mode, as you can see here. We have creation tools such as creating power shapes, we can create curves, etc, etc. So these tools over here are for designing things or creating things and for going into particular modes. Over on the right hand side here we have our big color bar, and we have some tools here that we can bring up more color modules, etc. We have some zoom tools, and here we have some view tools like view and wireframe, etc, and see what's cuttable, etc. And down the bottom here we have some page navigation tools. VinylMaster has no limit on the number of pages you can work with, so if you want to work with 100 pages, go for your life, you can. Over here we have our rulers, our default rulers, vertical and horizontal rulers. Another thing that VinylMaster has for the second row is what we call tool sets. Now we can get to them from this drop down, but because the recording will not show you this, I'll just show you how you can do it from the menu. You can come down to toolbars here. At the moment the default toolbar is set, which you can see up there in the second row. If I go to align and distribute, you can see I get all these alignment and distribution tools. Now they're all greyed out at the moment because I've got nothing to align. If I drew out a square, you can see now a lot of them become available. I've also got other things like, for example, guides and dimensions, as you can see there, and on it goes. You know, we've got our image tools there if we've got images selected. The concept of these tools here is that we can fix these tools depending on what we're doing. So I'll give you an example of that. If I've got a lot of alignment and distribution I want to do, let's say I've got a lot of objects that I want to align to each other and set them out in a particular fashion, I can go and have this tool set up here in the second row, and these tools will remain fixed for as long as I have them set as alignment and distribution tools. So these tool sets have an advantage of doing that for you. It means you can actually say, well, I need to do a lot of aligning, I'm going to fix the second row of tools to alignment tools so I can go ahead and do that project or that task. So that's the idea of those tools. But generally speaking, you'll work with your default tool set. And as you can see, I've got this square selected, and I'm now seeing information about this object. I can see its size here, its position, and I can see all these square tools. But I'll come back and explain those to you in a moment. So that's how that works. So the general concept of the program is your designing area in the center here, and we basically work from the top left down as we go through all these different tool sets down to the bottom right corner here. It's a standard graphics user interface. It's easy to follow. Things are laid out in a fashion to make it as easy as possible for you to find things. But we will go through those. The other thing I wanted to show you too is your default settings. Now, default settings are things like what default page size I come up with. If I go to text mode here, what default font I work with, what size is it, these sorts of things like that. These are our default settings. Other things would be nudge values. What's our nudge? What's our default units? Do we work in inches, metric? What do we work with? These are our default settings. Now we come to them from this button up here, our settings. Click on that and you can see we get our edit user settings. So these are our default program settings that we're working with. And if I expand this out, you can sort of see the things we're talking about. As I was saying before, default units. Do I want to work with point size or current units for my fonts? You know, these things are up to me. What nudge do I want? What smart nudge do I want? What registration mark sizes do I want? Do I want to be snapping to things? What display settings do I want? You know, do I want to work with blue guides or black dimensions? Do I want to have my dimensions font as Arial or Times New Roman or Vedanta or some other font? So these are the sorts of things we can set here, and there's hundreds of them. So you can really customize how you work with VinylMaster and how it presents itself every time it loads up. This is where we do this in here. So remember the settings button up here, click on that and that brings up the settings as you can see there. So that's how we do the settings there. Now more to the, I'll go to the menus now. I want to explain to you how the menus work. If I don't have anything selected like now and I go up to the objects menu, you can notice here that this is empty. There's really hardly anything in here because we simply don't have an object selected. But if I come out here and I'd say drew a square as so, and I come up to the objects menu, now you can see I get all these options here, all these things I can do, and you'll find other menus will also populate depending on what I've got selected. Here I can't group and ungroup because I've only got one object selected, but I can align and distribute some of this. I can auto fit this thing. So this is how the menus work. The menus are dynamic. They will change and they will things will become available depending on what you have selected. So if you go to a menu item and it's greyed out, and I'll just show you that, like redo's greyed out here because I haven't got a redo to do. I haven't undone anything to have a redo. So if you come to this menu here and things are greyed out, it's simply like there's no image information here because I don't have an image selected. You know that that's the reason why, because things are greyed out because you can't simply do that particular operation. Not because it's not available, it's just because you're not in the mode to do that particular thing. So this is why these things are greyed out, as you can see. I can do some things here, or not much. I can go into node edit mode, for example. So that's how the menus work. The menus are dynamic. Now the important thing from the menus here, if we go to the file menu here, you can see that you've got things like open and open as template, and you've got like security settings. You can password protect this document, the program, etc. You can set your backup schedules, import and export, publish to PDF. All these sorts of things are done from the file menu. And each menu is designed to be dedicated to a certain set of tasks. For example, the edit menu, you cut, copy and paste sorts of things, find and replace, insert guides and duplicate, all the things related to editing. Our view modes, what we can see, what we don't want to see, what we can snap to, our guide and grids and all these sort of settings, our units that we're currently working with. Same with our layout. These things are related to page issues, arrange, where we're like ungroup and group and all these sorts of things, creating like a tile array, for example. Our effects. There's a lot of effects in VinylMaster. You can do a lot of things to objects, and there's a lot of the effects here. Again, I'm in objects. I've got an object selected, and you can see under my objects menu, I get all these things related to an object. For example, things like welding, contour cutting, setting engraved fills, all these sorts of things. If I had an image selected, I can go insert an image here, and I can insert this image here. I go to images. You can see I get all these image tools available. Text. Again, if I go into text mode and I type in, say, test, for example, and I select on that, I go to text, and you can see a lot of text things become available. Because I've got a piece of text selected, I can do things like change its case. I can make it uppercase. Again, curves. If I create a freehand curve here like this, I go to curves, all of a sudden some node editing tools become available. But now, this is an interesting point. I'm not in node edit mode at the moment, I'm in object mode, so I don't actually get many curve tools. However, if I go to node edit mode and come back into that menu, you can see all of a sudden I have a lot more tools here to choose from. I've got my tools here. I can show certain things. At the moment I'm hiding my property inspector and my object manager. I'm hiding my page thumbnails, and I'll come back and I'll show you how those things work in a moment. And then you get these flyouts here where we can bring up certain modules, as you can see, all our plugins that we have, any extras that we have, the toolbars which I showed you in the beginning, and we have some floating toolbars like align and distribute. I can float this, I can roll it up, put it out the way, and I can use these alignment tools like this, or I can expand it out and then I can use these distribute, space apart and alignment tools, as you can see here. So that's how we get to those sorts of things. We have windows here, like for example, I've got another document open at the moment. You can see 3dfx is open. If I go to tile vertical, I can see these two windows like this. Okay, I can cascade my windows, do all those sorts of things. So these are the sorts of options I have here. Okay, you'll also notice, I'll come to the help menu in a little while. I want to explain a little bit more about that in a moment. You'll also notice I want to show you this. While I've got this curve selected here, you see this heads up display down the bottom. So depending on what you're working on and what you're doing, you'll see some tools pop up here. These are the sorts of tools that you use all the time when you say curve editing like this. you might want to use the smooth connector or the replace section or append to section, like here, replace section. If I click on that, I can come here and you can see I can do things like replace this section here. I can click on apply, and that's exactly what it does there. I can cancel out of that now, and you can see this heads-up display. This is very handy, this thing, because when I'm doing particular tasks, I don't necessarily want to be trying to find some of these tools. I can find them immediately just down here. So that's how these tools work. Now, let's go and start talking about this second row of tools here. This is an important thing. As you can see, I'm in this node edit mode, editing this curve here, and you can see here we have this all these node controls here based on the fact that I'm in a node edit mode. Now, if I go and click on this square here, I'm in node edit mode, but this square has power nodes. They're a different type of node. So as you can see here, I can change the corner style or the border thickness. These are node controls I've got, but it's a different set of tools, and as you can see in the second row, it automatically recognizes that, and I see a different tool set. Okay? If I go back into object mode, I get all my square tools here. Okay? And I'll show you another thing that this works, how the second row of tools works with creating things. For example, if I wanted to create, say, a circle now, I can come here and click on circle and draw this out, and as you can see, I've now got all these circle tools. But if I go to create another circle, I just want to show you this. See how these tools appear here? So I can actually change. I might decide, well, I don't want to make a circle, I want to make an arrow. And I can do that. And you'll see I get all the arrow tools. I can change things like the height of the head there and the length of the tip. I can change things like the tip radius, things like this. I can do these from the second row of tools because these are dynamic. These come up when I have this object selected. Okay, so that's how that works. All right. Now, there's another thing I want to show you too, which is zero weight state, and just explain to you what that means. You might have read about that. The concept of zero weight state, now that I've got some objects on the screen, if I select everything here like this, and I go to move it around, you can see that it moves in real time, and you see a preview of everything, as you can see like that. I'll bring in a few more, another large image here. I think this one's quite large. If I move this around, it does it in real time too. That's how fast this program actually is. I need to actually create, for example, if I create a lot of these, I might go to, say, step and repeat. So to do that, I'll come down to here, and I'll go down to step and repeat. I'll do a tile array of this, and I'll do, say, 6 by 6 of these things. So I've got a lot of them, and I'll move them around. You can see it's a dotted line now. I'm no longer seeing the actual images. But if I hold the mouse for long enough, you can see the program shows me a preview. So the concept of zero weight state is show the user something immediately, don't delay people. So in other words, I can immediately move this huge array of bitmaps. I mean, there's a lot of memory being used here. It's 156 meg, as you can see. And I'm moving this around in real time, and that's the advantage of zero weight state. What that really means is that the program is dynamic. It will work with you in real time. You don't have to wait for things to happen. So in some programs, when you go to move a big bitmap like this, you move it like that, and then you have to sit there and wait and twiddle your thumbs or make a cup of coffee while it redraws itself. So the way VinylMaster Pro is designed, or VinylMaster is designed, is so that you don't have that problem. Everything works in real time. If it can't draw, to zoom out, if it can't draw everything in one hit, which it can in this case, I'll zoom in, it still can. It's a very fast program. You can see when it can't, it just draws in a dotted line. So you're never waiting for the program to do anything. And that's what we mean by zero weight state. So just delete out of all those. And that's the concept behind that. Okay. Now the other thing too, just while we were talking about this dynamic nature of everything, you will sometimes find that you'll be working on something and for some reason you can't work out how to do something. Just remember that mostly everything is in the menus. Nearly every tool and feature, not all, but a lot of them, the bulk of them, are in the menus here. And this is where you can find most things. So if you do get stuck, always think about finding the answer in the menus, okay? And I'll come back to actually how you actually get help on extra things in a moment. But one thing you would be pleased to know is that there's actually dynamic help too with the fast hints, and I'll quickly show you those while we're here. I go to Help Tools here, and we select on an item as so, you can see it shows us information immediately about this particular item here under fast hints. So it's just important that you know that if you're in this particular mode, you can find out information about what you've got selected. For example, I've now got an arrow selected, so I see information about arrows and how they work. So if you ever get stuck, you've also got these fast hints on the side here. You know, if I've got an object selected, it tells me information about an object, so on and so forth. But we'll just go back to the Object Manager for a moment. I'll put that away. I want to come back and explain those things a little bit better in a moment. I just wanted you to be aware that there are actually live hints, plus the manual up here under Help Topics. So you do have a lot of help at your fingertips. Okay. Now, I suppose while we're actually on that subject, let's actually have a better look at the Object Manager. Now, to do that, I'm just going to go to this 3DFX page here. Now, this is available from the samples folder in VinylMaster, so you can access this job yourself. The reason why I brought this up is because I want to show you how you can work with multiple pages. As you can see, there's 3 pages, page 1 of 3 here. I just wanted to show you how the Object Manager and Property Inspector work. So we just click on this flyout here, and we get our properties here. I'll just go to Object Mode and Property Inspector together, which is this button here. This shows us both our Object Manager and our Property Inspector, and I'm just showing you how you can actually change the view by moving it up and down like that. This button here just shows us our Object Manager. Now, the Object Manager is a great way of selecting and moving things around. So this is all our objects in our 3 pages. You've got page 1, which we're on here, page 2, which we've got here, and page 3, which we've got here. Okay, so these are 3 separate pages, and if I scroll through them like that, you can see the Object Manager goes through as it shows us these different pages, and I can actually go through and I can actually select things in here. For example, I can select the 3D tools, and as you can see, as soon as I select the 3D tools, by clicking here, all the 3D tools come up while I'm in object mode. If I go to Node Edit mode with 3D tools selected, you can see that I get even more 3D tools because I'm in edit mode with a 3D object selected. So this is what the dynamic nature of these tools, that it's important for you to understand. That's why this keeps changing here, because it's seeing what you're doing and dynamically changing along here. And I can go through and I can select other things here on different pages, as you can see, and go through. So that's the advantage of the Object Manager. I can move things, their Z order, by moving them around, and I can view things, as you can see, and I can select individual objects, which means that when I selected it, I can then go in and edit it. So that's a handy thing for you to know. Okay, the other thing is the Property Inspector. So if I click on this button here, I go to my Property Inspector. Now, the Property Inspector is quite an advanced concept for a program like this. Now, the idea behind a Property Inspector is if I've got something selected like this object, I'm going to see a lot of information about this particular object here. And I also get properties that are related to my actual document and my application here. So I can actually change my units on the fly. I can change things like my anchor points and what modes I'm in, what nudge settings I'm using, and I can go on and on and on here and change a whole range of parameters and settings about the whole program or what I've actually got selected. So if I've got, say, if I'm in text mode and I select some text, I can now come down here and I can see my text tools, and you can see here I can set things like my bullets, my horizontal alignment, kerning and tracking. You know, it just goes on and on and on. You get hundreds of tools related to what you're working on from here, and you can collapse all these. You can go in here and just collapse them down, and you'll see that it's really not that complicated once they're all collapsed, because you can just see what's relevant. Like I can just look at the text tools, and I can collapse those internally as well. So I can decide, well, I'm really quite interested here in my kerning here, and I might want to actually, at the moment I'm using embedded kerning, I might want to change that to, say, loose kerning, and as you can see, the kerning changes. So the advantage with the Property Inspector is that I can programmatically, in a sense, come here to the properties and change these things in the drawing area using these tools, rather than having to go up here and try and find them up here. I'll always find every tool, every property related to everything I'm working on, you will find in this list here. This is where it belongs, and this is where you're going to find everything about every individual object within your designing area. And you can come in here and change things. And of course, the great thing about this is that you can select multiple things and change them all together. So I'll just go to the end here. If I go to a new page here, I'll just do squares for the sake of this exercise here. I'll make that a black square. And if I just duplicate that square and I duplicate this one here, for example, I select all 3 of them, okay, I can go here and I can change all their fill to say orange, or I can set their opacity, in other words how see-through they are. I can give them a pen style. The moment there's no pen, I can make it an outline like this. I can expand that out. Now you can see I get a lot more options, and I can set the pen style for these things. I can change the corner styles and all sorts of things. In other words, I can change a lot of, or a group of things, or a group of selected things using my property inspector. So that's a great tool, that property inspector. It's really, really powerful. It lets you do a lot of things. You'd be amazed the control you have over your design elements when you use the property inspector. So I strongly encourage you to get used to it and learn how it works. And as I showed you before, if I select an object like this, I can also see some help tools about it here, under this help tools here, these fast hints. Okay, now another thing I'll show you here which is interesting, I'll just put the property inspector away for a moment. There's another docker here. This is our page thumbnail view. Now we know we've got, 4 pages now, so I can click that out and you can see that I've got this thumbnail viewer. Now I can actually move pages in between, and I can come in here and I can do things like add a page, as you can see here. I can delete that page. I can create master pages here. I can delete master pages. I can right click on this and I can set a whole bunch of parameters here. I can frost backgrounds for my master pages and do all sorts of things. And something I haven't mentioned in this tutorial is that, of course, everything I've mentioned so far has its own topic in the help and its own lesson as well. Or nearly everything has a lesson. I mean, we've done a lot of lessons. There's over 100 of them. So there are a lot of lessons and there's a lot of help from the help topics. You just click on this or press F1 on your keyboard and you can bring up your help topics. So that's how that works. Okay, another thing I was going to show you is obviously on the second row of tools here, or this double row of tools, these, as I said originally, are creation tools. So I'll just delete out those squares. I've already given you some indication of this. You can left click and you can see how it pops out this this flyout here, as you can see, and the extra flyout. So I can actually keep creating things here. So I've got all these options by these flyouts. Like I can select clip art, for example, double click on it, and I can make a piece of clip art. I need to give it a color, of course. It needs to have a fill. And this is how we do these things. We can click on these flyouts and create things like this, as you can see. We can create things like text boxes and all our text tools, etc. So that's how these things work here, these flyouts, as you can see there. You can insert an image from here, for example, and bring in a duck like this. That's how that works. Now, if I wanted to change the color of something like this, for example, I can come over here and use this color bar over here, and you can see how it scrolls through. And if I want to work with a particular set of colors, like a color palette, I can click on this button here. I can come to, say, my vinyl colors, and I might want to work with Scotch Cal here. I click accept, and I see all my Scotch Cal colors here. And if I hover over things, now that's not good because the recording's showing, I'll hover over something else. You can see everything has a long or a short hint and a long hint. In other words, there's a title which tells you what that button is, and then there's quite a long hint below it explaining more about it. So as I go over things, you can see that we get information about it, etc., etc. So don't forget that whenever you're unsure about what a button does, just hover your mouse over it, as you can see I'm doing here, and you get a lot of information about what in each individual thing does, or each individual tool does. So it's important you know about that. And the same with the colors here. When I select on it, it tells me what the color is, but unfortunately it's getting blocked out by the recording. So that's how we set our colors. We've got default colors here. This is an interactive set here. This changes the actual hue, and this changes the hue here, and this changes it from darker to lighter. So this is a lighter button, a darker button, and this changes the hue along the axis of the hue there, or of the color itself. And we've got some default colors here. We also have things like underbase, registration marks, etc. up here. Again, these have their own tools. You can also work in wireframe independently, so you can put particular curves into wireframe themselves or out of wireframe. So if I did a duplicate of that, I can have one in its own wireframe view, or I can have it in full view, or I can look in all wireframe by clicking down here. And I can just look in black and white. So I have all these sorts of options available to me down here. And I've got these zoom tools here. I can zoom to the page. I've got my scroll bars, etc. So that's how that works. Now when it comes to the rulers, you'll be pleased to know you can actually move these around like this. So I can put my rulers wherever I like. Okay, so that shows you how to do that. And I can also reset my origin point. So I can set my origin for my ruler wherever I want it. If I want it down the bottom corner here, you can see it snaps to the page. I can put it down there and work from that position. So 0, 0 is from the bottom left corner. If I prefer to have it in the top left corner rather than the bottom left corner, I can just put it up there. And as you can see, it just snaps to the page, like so. So I've got my 0, 0 ruler there. So that's how that works. We've also got a whole range of zoom tools. If I want to zoom right into this object here, I can come out to this flyout and you can see all these zoom tools. So I can go to zoom mode and I can just zoom straight into there. Or I can zoom to all like that by clicking this button down here. I've got these zoom tools, out, in, zooms to selected. I can zoom to a scale. Unfortunately, the recording is cutting that off, but you can come back and see this when you're using the program. So I've got lots of zoom controls. And I've also got lots of page controls here as well. I can scroll to the beginning of the page. I can say I want to go to page 3. I've also got the ability to go to my page thumbnail viewer and scroll through my pages like this. So I've got those sorts of controls for page controls. Okay, and the other thing is, of course, we can also use things like this launch module up here to bring up other modules. So I could bring up, for example, my vinyl spooler by clicking on that, and you'll see my vinyl spooler loads up, or my rip manager, so on and so forth. So I've got these sorts of controls up here as well for the flyouts. Now, that sort of covers the general layout of the program. We've discussed things like Object Manager, Property Inspector here. I've shown you these sort of fast hints here, so it's important you know that you've got access to all that. You've got your page thumbnail viewer, as you can see there. We've explained to you that the second row of tools are dynamic, so it's important you remember that when these change, it's only because you've selected something. For example, if I select text, I see all the text tools, so on and so forth. All these tools over here are for designing and creating things, and I can change all sorts of things by left-clicking on the flyout and just holding. Actually, no, I don't have to hold it down. I can just left-click. Once I've left-clicked once, you can see that it remembers the flyouts. As you can see here, like here are all our special effects tools here, and our alignment tools, etc. So a lot of tools pop out and keep popping out, giving us more and more controls. So like our view options, for example, you can see some quite advanced view options here. I can turn things on and off. I don't have to see everything. If I don't want to see masks or effects, I can turn these things off. I can turn my heads up off. I can turn my rulers off. I can also turn them off like that as well, as you can see, on and off. So there's lots of those sorts of controls. We have all our page options up here like this, as you can see. So make sure you look around the program to see where all these things are. There's a lot of tools and controls. And don't forget you've got your property inspector to find those sorts of things. Now if you do get stuck, okay, and you're bound to, it's a very big program, it does a lot of things. There's, literally hundreds and thousands of tools, and there's a lot you can do with this software. It's quite amazing the sorts of things you can do. Some of the effects that I've seen some of our customers doing with it already, just from the demo version, is quite extraordinary. Sorts of things that very creative minds can create. This lets you do those sorts of things. But if you do get stuck, come to the help menu here and click on help topics. You click on that, the help viewer comes up, as you can see, like this, and you can come here and select any of these topics you want to learn more about, or you can come onto the left hand side here and just push these things out, and you can learn more about each individual one of these topics. You can click on this and it shows you a bigger size of that particular window. You can play a lesson, which is similar to this tutorial that you're watching now, obviously much shorter, and it will talk in depth about this particular topic and tell you more about it itself. And there's over 100 of these, as I've said before, so there's a lot of help available to you. The other thing you might want to know as well from the help menu here is that you can also go to the support flyout. We have an online FAQ. Lots of questions are answered here. Lots of general questions people have are answered. It's actually quite a good FAQ in many respects, because it actually deals with a whole bunch of issues. We have an online knowledge base, so you have to log in there, so you have to register for that, but that's available to anybody. You can register and get onto our knowledge base. We've also got forums, so if you want to have a chat about the software more generally, this isn't tech support, but this is just general chit-chat, you can go there. You can also contact us. If you do happen to find a bug or something, let us know. You guys are the ones who let us know these things, so by all means, please let us know. If you have a problem with our business, so to speak, contact our customer service people. I'm sure they'll help you out. And you can also go to the gateway as well to access things like updates and things, and this automatically comes up when you first run the program. So that's where you find a lot of the help there. As I've shown you, there's that pop-out fast hints help as well. There's also help with particular modules. For example, just quickly show you that before we finish up now. If I go to the shading tools here, you can see we get this sort of help here. So you'll also get that sort of help available from many of the modules as well. So that covers the general layout of the program. As you can see, it does a lot of things. It's reasonably easy to use, but you do need to spend some time just looking at things, getting a feel for everything. Please watch the lessons. They do deal with just about everything in the program. The help, as I've said before under this manual here, is extensive. It really does go through a lot of the things the program does. There's also a big website that goes through all these sorts of things, and the other things I've mentioned under the support here. And that's the end of this tutorial.